This is Homeschool 101, a collaboration between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Stay attentive and attempt all activities. And now, today's lesson.
Hi again, back at it with Homeschool 101 for CSEC Theatre Arts. And I am here with Mrs. Tavia Hunte of the Shiva School of Dance. And she's also a lecturer at the Antigua State College in the Liberal Arts Department, teaching the performing arts, the dance option, as well as the business unit. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be talking to, hopefully, some of your future students for the next academic year.
Right.
And we probably have some fourth formers watching. So if you love dance, this is going to be your instructor. She's going to be your instructor up at Antigua State College. So we've invited Miss Hunte here today because the theater exam actually has a few questions that are dance specific. Now, your teacher would have explained to you that for the CSEC Theatre Arts, there are three options: drama, dance, and stagecraft. Right now in Antigua and Barbuda, however, all the schools that do this subject, we only do the drama option. But the paper is the same all across the board. Everybody has to know the cultural art forms. And there are few questions, however, that are dance specific. So I'm going to turn it over to Tavia so that she can give you some of the dance terms that may help you drama students out on the CXC paper.
All right, thank you, Zarah, and hello, everyone. Okay, so it is a little difficult to really single out every single thing that you may need to know in terms of understanding what are your requirements for answering the dance-related questions, because of course every year CXC will change the questions and so on. So what I will aim to do is give you a general scope of where you can focus your attention where the dance content is concerned. So what we have is, in theater, there's what we do dance movement for theater. So the students have a minimal experience, but one that is relative to the areas of study like the weight complex, choreography, devices, and so on. And so there is a content that focuses on choreographic devices that the lecturer can just give the students like an introductory level, or you can bring in someone like myself who can take them through some what we call improvisational exercises, or like what you had with Rohan from Barbados, going through just the traditional steps, so the students have a sense of familiarity. When CXC poses these questions on the CSEC exam, they like to look at students being able to identify, okay, what is the choreography about? What does this term mean? When you look at choreographic devices, it focuses on how choreographies come together. And the idea of choreography is telling a story, which in theater arts you are about storytelling, right? And often I find that the style and the way that it's broken down is very similar. So you guys may have a situation where you teach your students about audience relationship, and you as the actor, the relationship between you and them. It's the same principle in the dance genre. So where we're looking at now, like for instance, what we have here on the screen, and we're looking at a specific choreography called the crossing, choreographed by the late Professor Rex Nettleford. Now, as the students can see, this was done since 1978. So it's very, very old, and it is still being performed as a part of the repertoire of the company. So what you will have is generations of dancers who are now members of the company would have had the opportunity at some part of their time with them going either a part of this dance or being familiar with looking at other senior dancers performing. And the crossing in this particular context is a choreography that focuses on the transatlantic slave trade experience of the slaves that were crossing the Atlantic and having to exist in Jamaica. And it's looking at the relationship of the oppressor and looking at the system of how they had to survive. And so one of the questions that I remembered seeing, it was asking them, okay, what does the image mean? So, you're gonna pull it up?
Yeah.
All right, so it says, which of the following classification best reflects the relationship between the character, the mood, and the movement in photograph A, which would be the group photo. Now,
Right, it's asking for character, movement, and mood.
Right.
And notice, remember I told you guys this in, I think, episode 1. If you notice, best is capitalized.
Right.
So it could be that there are several options here that are applicable, but they want the best one.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, can I switch with you so
Sure.
I can see the screen? All right, so what I am looking at here is sometimes as a student, we know how the study experience goes. Sometimes you have to just do a process of elimination, sometimes just use common sense. If you look at the photograph, you can definitely see that there's a pushback. The people, they don't look happy, and they are doing actions where they are pushing against something that is forcing itself on them. And you can clearly see the two people in white. We can already literally see the representation there. This is white oppression, okay? And they're pushing against that. So when you think of the mood, when you go back to the options, then you would be able to immediately say, okay, it is not definitely looking at anything that relates to pain, okay? So you can already say, okay, it's not a painful situation. They're definitely sad, but I don't think that this question is related to the group one. This question that I'm looking at right now, it looks like it's more asking about the question where the couple is on the floor. And again,
No, it's yeah.
okay, but they don't look like they relate.
Contraction.
All right, so a contraction happens when the pelvic makes a C shape and the torso comes into a C like this. So when the persons are pushing forward, that's the contraction right there. So you see that shape already in the body of the persons that are pushing like that. So right there, you look for that. So there is a bend and contraction happening here. And so you could easily see that this may be your best option.
What would be the difference between the curl and the contraction?
Well, the contraction involves curling. So there's a similarity here. But when you think about, yes, there is reach, okay? There's reach from the back line to the front. So that would make sense. There is relationship. You see that here. This relationship could be that they're trying to take one of the persons from the pack and single them out. They're probably, aiming to beat them, harm them, whatever the case is. And so, again, it goes through the process of elimination. Let's go back to the question. All right, so curl and reach. We have, it's twice. And this one, I would definitely say, in order for you to have an idea where you're going with answering these questions, you have to study what the choreography is. And this is where students probably miss the mark. If you don't understand what is the choreographic intent of the piece, you will not be able to pick the best possible answer because they're similar. Now, the crossing is a piece that is a part of the repertoire, and so there is content related to how this choreography was made, why it was made, what is the storyline, what is the intent. So what lecturers will have to do for their students is that they will have to pick out several choreographic works, we call them, and then study the history of the piece. And right away, the students will know this is a mother and son, this is a husband and wife, this is a boyfriend and girlfriend, and then that will help them. Because look, you have relationships. Is it siblings? Is it lovers? Is it husband and wife? is it mother and son?
And again, you guys know how I feel about multiple choice, but
Yeah, not
you
my
need
favorite
to.
either.
You know, I'm not gonna pretend I'm not the biggest fan of multiple choice. And a question like this definitely asks you to look at everything as a whole, because they are related. And as you see, they're very, very close to each other, which means arguably it could be any of those
It could be any of
situations,
them. It could be
but
more
they're
than one,
asking
but
for the
they're
best
one.
one.
Yeah.
Now, what is not seen here, and this is an example from a CSEC practice paper, is that these images refer to about 3 questions. So whenever you see on the paper or the e-testing item, whatever refers to this, pay close attention to it. Even go and look at what the second or third question that is related to it might be, because it just might give you a clue. So this is asking what is happening, and the answer is actually that they're lovers. It's a sorrowful mood, and the movement is curl and reach, as Miss Hunt explained. And as you can see, there's sorrow here, and the colors as well will help to create that mood. If you look at the question that comes after that one, which of the following description best, notice again, best is in all caps, which describes the setting, the conflict, and the resolution? And so look at it. Again, this is a combination answer, so you have to look at all the choices together and select the best possible option. Now the answer for this is actually A. Setting, which is slavery, the conflict, a man and woman from different background, and the resolution, killing of the man. Let's look at that image again. One of the things that you need to pay attention here is the costume, because if you notice in the group photo, her costume is different from the other women. So even though all the actors are people of color, the costume definitely helps to suggest that there definitely is a
difference in the
racial
background,
difference and a socioeconomic difference. The frills definitely would suggest class. And notice these women, their hair
They're tied. Their heads
covered,
are tied, yeah.
right? It was thought of an offense for black women to wear their
Show their
hair,
hair.
whether it was out as an afro or beautiful cornrows. It was offensive to plantation owners. Her hair is not covered, and the frills are there. And noticeably, these 2 men, they're dressed in all white, and the hoods kind of remind you of the Ku Klux
Yes,
Klan.
it does have that.
And with her mourning over her lover, it is suggested that he's been killed.
Yes.
So that was Mrs. Tavia Hunte of the Shiva School of Dance. And now I have a special treat. Like I said, we are looking at the cultural forms. Now your teachers would have definitely prepared you on wake, carnival, and landship. So for today's session, and don't forget to reread the notes in your textbook. The textbook actually gives you some awesome notes on each of those cultural forms. But right now, I have a special treat for you. Now, the performing arts is all about collaboration. When you get the chance to work with other practitioners, you definitely take that opportunity, because it's all about learning and developing your skills. And I have with me here today Mr. Rohan Blanche, who is actually a Bajan and who participated in landship growing up in Barbados. He is a choreographer, a musical director, a performer, and a really awesome person. And if he looks familiar, it's because he may have taught you or you have seen him at Shiva's School of Dance. So, Rohan, thank you so much for agreeing to give us a little crash course demonstration for landship. And if you could just speak to the students about your experience as a boy in Barbados, learning about landship and its maneuvers, not dance moves, maneuvers. I got that right?
Yes, please.
Maneuvers for this particular cultural form.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks for having me. All right, so everything stems from who you are as a person. So the space of the land also has to speak about it. So as a Barbadian, when you speak about the landship, it goes back for the way how we talk, our food, the way how we dress, our natural customs, stuff we don't normally would pay notice to. But when you study an art form or you learn more about yourself, you realize your parents, the upbringing, everything has its unfolding or its place that makes it into one. So the landship is a movement. It is stemmed from music instruments. It's called a bass drum, a kettle drum, and the whistle is known as a penny whistle. So these three instruments come together and it creates a rhythm called tuck band. It's called a tuck, all together it's called a tuck band. The rhythm is called tuck. So this is a rhythm that we know from when you know music. This is one of the first rhythms you know in Barbados as a kid. This is the music you know. All the musicians know music. At school, when you're playing music, you're having your rap sessions in school, this is the beat that you would use. So it's a very infectious beat. So the way how we talk in itself, the way how I rise, you call a Bajan accent, the way how I rise, the way my accent falls, it is the same way the tuck goes. So a demonstration what tuck really is, tuck band then developed from, back in the days when persons were experimenting or the rhythm. We can use certain drums we know from Africa.
Right.
Our ancestors can use drums, so
And they should know the answer to this, right? Even though it's theater, we have our history coming into play. Because the drums, a lot of the African drums were banned because they were also used as signal drums, and the plantation owners thought that the enslaved people might have sent secret messages to each other. So the bass drum is actually a European instrument originally.
Yes.
And the
kettle
drum and the penny whistle were all instruments from the European culture. And here's a pop quiz for you. Which military force is the landship adapted from? Ding, 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 ding. I hope you're writing your answers there on Facebook. If you said the British Navy, you are correct.
Right. Barbados is a British colony, so it stems why it is the British Navy. So, since we can use the authentic drums, we use those drums and we created our own rhythm. This is a tuck rhythm. The landship movement started in each village. By that meaning, it was something that each individual in the village represented or called theirs. We use it to express ourselves. We use it in festivals. We use it just even to have fun. So, as people of color, we always like rhythm and we always like movements. So the music was infectious, so likewise, the movement should be infectious too, so then it can be catchy and enjoyed. So we created through time, evolve and adapt to certain stuff. A lot of the movements are mimics also from the British military. So you see like first maneuver, it's called maneuvers, as you said. And then the first one is exercise. So the landship is also based on a ship. Everyone is on a ship. We're decked out in, sailor's garb. Your captain, you have the quartermaster, there's a nurse on board, and each person has their signature uniform that identifies who they are. The captain, as you know, he who leads the ship, he's the person in charge of the ship. He gives the orders, he makes sure every person is assigned to their duties and how they, just take care. So on deck, we will say, first maneuver we'll say is exercise. We'll exercise with your hands. You can hold this for me, please. You can start with exercising of the hands. So for any of your students who you're doing it, you want to exercise, you want to start warming up, and then also it's called a marking time to learning the rhythm. The first rhythm you're going to start with in the tuck rhythm is called a 3/4 rhythm, is a waltz. It's a slow beat. So you get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, pam, pa-tam, pam, 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 pa-da-da-da-pam. So that is how you would normally hear the kettle drum playing. Pa-da-da-pam, pam, pa-da-da-pam, pam, 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 pam. Okay? So a drill or exercise you start in the landship will be hands exercises just to get coordination going as well.
So I'm gonna put on my mic so I can be your student.
Sure. So in the military, so the first thing you know as military persons we do, you march. So you're gonna start with just moving in time, so then you get more depth or anything. So you just hands at your side, standing foot straight, head chin up, and you're gonna just lift your knees up. 1, alternating 2, and 3, and 4, and a 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So if I was the captain, I would say slow march. So as I say slow march, then you start slow march.
I never got that move in when I
And then you have a whistle to blow you off to start you to go. So slow march and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We go step and up, just lifting. Yes, just on the spot.
Okay.
Just drilling to get accustomed to the time.
All
2
right.
and 3 and 4 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that's just basically getting yourself warm up. That's the legs. Now we can try exercise with the hands as well.
And don't forget, the captain is who uses the whistle to start and end the different movements. The captain.
Yes, please. Okay, so you face me now. So you're gonna follow me. You're gonna hands in, hands up, hands in, hands out, hands in, hands out, hands in, and down we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. All right. So we're gonna add march time with the hands as well. So we can start in the right leg. Okay. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 with hands. Now we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. One more time and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. It's okay. And 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So that's basic. Are you understanding your slow marching time? You're understanding exercises starting to come up and coordination. Okay. Like in any boat, you say in the landship, when you're moving this slow, you can go in depth. So just to understand, if you have that, you can say a boat. In that, steamboats was used in that time. So you start with steam. So anytime the boat first start, you start about 20 pounds of steam. And mostly the preferred rhythm used then will be the waltz. The waltz, which is again is a 3/4 timing. Okay? And you use the waltz. So every time we exercise, we move in slow. All these maneuvers. So you see, if you go online, you can also look at YouTube and stuff, and you see different landships, and you realize there are fast beats and there are slow beats, and you see different maneuvers. Okay? So we can use this first maneuver, walking forward. When we get to a point forward right here, we can just turn around and come back to this point. So it's going to look like this. Then we can turn, and come back to our space. Okay? 5, 6, and 7, 8. We go 1 and 2 and 3 and turn. 3 and 2 and 3 and turn. 3 and 2 and 3 and last turn. 3 and 2, turn. Last turn. 7, 8, halt. Beautiful. So that's your first drill. So in these drills, you learn coordination, you learn timing, and also moving as a unit. Remember, you're on the sea. So if you have rough seas, and if you don't have no wind, everything is deal with timing and working together as a unit. Okay? Another stuff that when you say the unit, all the landship in different parishes of Barbados, we have a landship. And basically the landship was say lower class, average Barbadians coming together in a movement. You understand? Not doing movements. A movement meaning as a collection of people with a purpose. So, and each landship, what they do, they take care of each other. Back home, some of you call it a meeting. I think here in Antigua, you call it a box.
Yes.
A box.
Throw in a box.
Throw in a box. So it's something like that. So what that does is every person in the landship and the community was taken care of. So they started helping out each other, doing stuff for each other, and being a proper unit.
So note that they are called ships, not clubs.
No.
And each village had its own ship. So that's the proper term. The ship, not a club, ship. Okay? And again, don't forget to go over the notes in the book because it has a lot of excellent information in your textbook with the history, the person who began the movement. That's Moses, who is a black sailor that returned to Barbados.
Yes, please.
And with a lot of our different cultural forms, we see the marriage between our European and African ancestors. And we'll get into more of that when we start talking about Carnival.
True. So that is just a warm-up. There's several different movements or maneuvers. And so you all don't have a mix-up in what you call movements from maneuvers. When you're doing the landship, when the landship is just doing from the origins of just the landship itself, it will call maneuvers.
Okay.
As you go into, you take it into dance. You know, dance evolves. So if you have a movement like this here, after time, dancers want to do more. You know, we don't want to just stay in one space. We create more movement as we get more technical, as we learn our bodies more, we do more. So when you go for the landship and you go from a dancer's perspective, he would say movements, the maneuvers, they are the maneuvers of the landship, but just the dancers took the maneuvers and created more movement to the maneuvers.
Okay.
So just understand, if you hear someone say movement, you understand it is from a dance perspective and not truly a landship. But when you speak of the landship, you always have to refer to the maneuvers as maneuvers and not movements.
You got that? I hope that you got that. So can I put on some music and
Sure.
you go through a routine that one might see from a ship?
Sure.
You're watching Homeschool 101.
This is a musician from Barbados. Yeah, everyone knows him as Lil Rick. Pretty nice guy, awesome beats, very infectious rhythm, so it gets you going from day one. So you can just go over a couple movements so we get you a base of what the landship really is. Okay, so we just did this, what's called the slow waltz or the exercising. So we're gonna move it onto a fassi. Fassi meaning now when you're moving from the slow part of the boat just moving off, which is the waltz section, slow moving, into moving a little faster, which you can be pushing say more of 40 pounds of steam. So the engine of the boat pushes faster. So when you speak of the engine of the boat, the landship, you speak of the top band. The landship itself, the persons on the boat are the people, the vessel. But the engine, what you hear keeps the steam going on and going against the momentum is the top itself. That is the bass, the kittle, and the penny whistle. When these three instruments pick up steam, meaning the beats are faster, more vigorous, that is mean that steam is picking up now on the landship or it's picking up on the boat, the vessel. So we're gonna pick up steam now and we're gonna move into a fassi. I'm gonna show you a couple of movements. So the first movement we just did was the general exercise with hands. We go to slow march, hands, that is the general exercise. Then I move on to what's called a toe beat. A toe beat is when you place a foot forward, you can put your foot forward, the matching hand the same side, forward as well, and you're gonna tap the toe here. So just understanding, both legs are parallel, facing forward, and tapping here. The variation is when it goes in and out, what you call a left and right, which go left and right. And you crouch forward a bit, and this is called a toe beat. It can alternate slowly, or you can double it up and move it on toe beating, okay? That is the toe beat. Next exercise you're gonna move to now we're gonna do is the sailor's hop. Or let's do the lowering of the sails first. Lowering of the sails. Just so it says, when you're sailing a boat, you're gonna hold the sails and you're gonna pull down. You're pulling down. You're pulling down the time. So anytime pulling down, pulling down, pulling down, pulling down, and this maneuvers could be done this way standing, or you go into what's called plie position, and you pull, pulling down, pulling down. Again, as dancers, we evolve stuff and we develop. So we're not gonna stay here and just make it like this basic. We can go forward with a chuck, okay? That's an Antiguan word, chuck. We call it juk in Barbados, we call it juking, or we chucking. Chucking forward, and that is called lowering the sails. Lowering the sails again, jumping on the spot, legs open, toes apart, facing outward. That's called lowering the sails. Now we're gonna do something called the sailor's hop. Sailor's hop, with your hands cupped at the side of your hips, you bent in a position, you study dance at a 45-degree angle, and you're gonna just go to the right, and to the left, and this is called sailor's hop. Down, kick, down, kick, down, kick, down, kick, down, kick. And that is a sailor's hop. All right? Moving on, we're gonna go to, since we just did the sailor's hop, we can go to rough seas. As you know, on the waters, and this is when the tug gets faster. We go faster, the rhythm is bigger, the rhythm is more vigorous, and you go to rough seas. So rough seas now, okay? Or when you're on the deck, and you're gonna use triplet timing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you see the footwork first, we go. You go with the ball of the right leg, you go ball, flat, ball, change, ball, flat, ball, change. All right? Speed it up a bit. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right? So it looks like this. And this movement could go backward and forward. You can also turn it to the side. And this is basically how the rhythm looks. Rough seas. Then also another rough seas. As you're moving along, back in the crouch position, and we're going right and left again. So this is rough seas here. Okay? Rough seas. So that's a couple. Let's move again. So we'll add, we can go to what's called section 19. Section 19, another famous move you're gonna see is when you're gonna plant your legs, hands up, and you push and pull. Jumping forward. Okay? You can turn and go backwards with it. And that is section 19. Okay? Then you have also section 20. Section 20, you can either put your hands in your hips on the side, but basically it is lifting the knees up. Like England. So it's section 20. And again, you can go forward, go back, turn to the side, you turn it around in a circle. And now, mark time when the engine gets to me through the fast rhythm now, as you can hear the rhythm here. As a Bajan, you know all Bajans like to move their waist. We're known for one thing, walk up. All right? So in a true Bajan context, you can hear the music, raise the music a little bit. Okay, hear the music. So this is when the rhythm starts to get really to you now. So imagine you're like in Carnival. This is our Carnival every time we get a tuck band. So we mark time now how we did the slow walks, or mark time now for when we're really moving the 60 to 80 pounds of steam, music vibrating nice. This is how we're gonna move it. Okay, marking time. You go forward, you go back, and one of the most famous movements in the landship you can never, ever, ever, ever forget. Don't go nowhere in the world and never forget this movement. It's called Wangalo. If you want to spell it, it's W-A-N-G-L-E-L-O. Wangalo. All right? So, Wangalo is one leg to the side, basically more in front of the next one, slightly. So for this instance, we're gonna move the right leg slightly in front of the left. We're gonna plant them firmly into the floor, and that's we're gonna wangle low. So the hips now is what we're going here, so left and right, and they go low, down. You go down, and they come up. So this is the movements where all the young people like, the ladies like, you see in a bashmentship, because there's also another movement in the landscape where we're going from. We have the young people taking it from the more traditional way, and the young people adding a lot of movement. So if we get a wangle with what was done in the earlier days, the young people got a lot of movements now and going wangle. So again, as movement, the movement evolves. So that's just few maneuvers, or from a dance perspective, few movements. And see if we have any more. I'll give you one more, and then I'm gonna put all together into a small routine how you can move them. Let's do. Okay, let's do the side rock. We just did right wangle, and then add everything together. Right. So you did side rock, and you want to hoist in the sails. We can also add some actions to hoisting the sails. No hoisting the sails this way, hoisting the sails. We also go right. We also go left. And as we see a lot of action down here, we go down. We also, again, different actions of the landship. So let's put it together and give you a small routine of how the landship will go. Okay? So you'll start with my march. Basic steps of the landship in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much, Rohan. And just to be clear, if this were an actual performance, let's say during crop over, and ding ding ding, quick quiz, crop over is what festival for Barbados? That's right, that's their carnival. The different movements, the captain would be blowing the whistle to signal the change for each
Movement, maneuver.
Maneuver, not movement, maneuver. Right? So it'd be like, boop, boop.
So every time I whistle, it was changed. Yes. And that's another rough C as well. So that's movement that you know from somewhere that came back to you.
From you.
This is another rough C.
Whistle again.
Wangle. Ah, you see again, so everybody like that one? So that's one movement you don't ever forget. That's one. So there are many.
All right.
There are many.
Thank you so much, Rohan, and I hope this helps you guys in understanding landship a little bit more and how important it is to the Bajan culture and history.
You're watching Homeschool 101.
All right, so we're now going to move on to a cultural form that you have personally experienced or seen right here in Antigua and Barbuda, Carnival. Now, this is an interesting topic from CSEC because the truth is, Carnival has been celebrated in many different ways throughout the Caribbean. So it is important to look at some of the major similarities between the islands, as well as to appreciate the differences between them as well. Again, I refer to your textbook, which has some awesome information in there. And you'll find the emergence of masquerade, which is also a cultural form, merging with carnival as well, as we can see a lot of the masquerade characters in the respective islands present in their carnival celebrations. Now, if we're looking at the origins of carnival, we are going to be looking at our European history to begin with, because carnivals were celebrated back then. We're going to be looking at our European history as well and ancestry, as they would have brought a lot of their practices to the plantations here in the Caribbean, one of which would have been masquerade balls. They actually used to call them carnivals as well, and they were elaborate. And for those of you who were looking forward to proms, who knows, maybe we can still have them at the end of the year. Prom is actually short in form of the word promenade, where again, it would have been an aspect in masquerade balls where persons would walk along the promenade, showing off their elaborate masks and costumes. Of course, move forward a few years, costumes have definitely changed and evolved. And while the masks were used to disguise themselves for fun from our Europeans, our African ancestry found their place there as well. And you'd have persons wearing masks, adorning costumes, or smearing themselves with different raw material from molasses to clay to the dirt to disguise their play, because a lot of the enslaved people, when they were given holidays or the rules were relaxed while the plantation owners hosted their own carnivals or balls, the enslaved persons would mimic their slave masters, and of course the masks would be used to disguise them. Now, and again, the history students would know this. Of course, the enslaved persons from Africa were not allowed to openly practice their rituals and their cultures, but by adapting the European practices, they were able to kind of slyly, on the down low, merge their African traditions into the European ones that they were mimicking. Also, it tied in some islands like Trinidad. Celebrations took place before Ash Wednesday, before the start of the Lenten period, because they would get their carnal behavior out of the way. So that would be places like Trinidad, the Dominican Republic, the ABC Islands, for example. Lent would come into it. So you party hard, get your carnal sins out of the way, and then you repent. In other islands like Barbados, crop over, which is what they call their carnival, comes from the fact that they were celebrating the end of the harvesting, the sugar harvesting. So some carnivals around the Caribbean would take place in the summer after the harvest. Then you would have other celebrations that took the Christmas season, and they had their revelry there. And here's a fun fact for you, which you should know by now. Antigua's Carnival actually started out as Christmas Mass, which was held in December as part of the Christmas holiday celebrations. But it was then moved to the summer for commercial reasons, to attract tourism a bit more. What would be good to know, however, as you are revising the section on Carnival, is to know the different names for some of the carnivals around the Caribbean. Like I told you earlier, and you would have heard in the discussion with Rohan before, crop over is what Barbados calls their carnival. If we go to Grenada, can you guess what they might call their carnival? Ding, ding, ding. Spice Mass. In St. Kitts actually celebrates theirs in December as well. They call theirs Sugar Mass. And in Dominica, they call theirs the Rail Mass. It's also good to know the term John Canoe, which is celebrated in the Bahamas, Jamaica, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. So read up on the different carnivals around the Caribbean, as well as their other names. Also now we look at the masquerade characters, which make up a huge part of our carnival celebrations. Also, we look at the masquerade characters who play a very important part in our different carnival celebrations around the Caribbean. Can you name a major character for Antigua's carnival? That's right, the John Bull. Our John Bull, as you can see, this is an old photo of one here, and a more modern one. Now here's a little history for you. The John Bull was our ancestors' way of mimicking the slave master, hence the name John. And the whip masters would have been the slaves getting a chance to beat the slave master. Of course, the people owning the plantation would not have known this at the time. But this is one of the traditions that have continued into our present carnival, as well as our Stilt-Walkers. Now, different Caribbean islands have different names for them. One of the most popular ones, which is also used here in Antigua and Barbuda, Mukajumbi. And that comes from our African ancestors. Moko being the name of an African god, I think from Ghana originally. And Jumbi, we know, is another name for ghost. In some islands, they're called the long walkers, and we usually call them Stilt-Walkers as well. And that tradition, I know, continues here in Antigua with RT performers. Renee Laurent Thomas, she's doing such an amazing job keeping that tradition alive. But the history there is that they were believed to be spirits, guardians, who were positioned throughout the outskirts of a village and would warn people or scare offenders away. So that's a pretty good little history lesson right there, and a tradition that has survived the time of slavery to today. So while you're also paying attention to the notes, make sure you know the different characters specific to the different islands, like Pitchy Patchy, the Jab Jab, or the difference between Jab Jab and Jab Malassi. You might be familiar with the Jab Malassi because they are our blue devils, or sometimes you might see them in black, smeared all over them for oil, or brown clay. The slaves, enslaved people, would have taken that art form with the natural material in their villages, and they would make fun again of their plantation owners, and they'd cover their faces, their bodies, so they could not be recognized. That's the Jab Malassi. The Jab Jab kind of takes a little bit form of the stick fighting tradition as well. The Jab Jab takes a little bit of the stick fighting tradition as well, and they're usually in satin material with a shiny breastplate here that was actually used to distract their adversary. So it was a technique, even though today it's developed into, you know, a very elaborate costume, very beautiful costume. And they are known to have their whips. And if a Jab Jab met another one, they would have this really awesome performance, kind of like fake fighting, that would pretty much be similar to the stick fighting maneuvers from that cultural art form. Then you have, for example, another character that you should know would be Bam Bam Sally, the belly woman. And these figures were originally played by men, and it's over-exaggerated the female form, usually with the butt being all the way out here. I mean, of course, today women play those characters as well, but they were a sign of fertility as well as celebrating, or in some cases, especially if the Europeans were not pleased about it, mocking the black female form. So it's important to know these characters from different islands in case you get a question asking you about those characters. We're gonna look now at wake. And again, refer to your textbook. These are things you should definitely read if you haven't read before, and I know your teacher told you to read it already. wake. That is such an interesting topic. And it is, we have wake, night, as well as setup. So the setup would be the preparation. And all of this is all part of the observance of death, losing a loved one. And the wake or night or setup is more or less a marriage between what has survived from our African ancestry as well as the religion forced upon our ancestors, which is Christianity. So you might hear someone say they're going to sing Sankey. And Sankey hymns are from the songwriter Sankey. So those are actually Christian songs, Christian hymns, some of which you may sing in church. Then you have some traditions, the night, because it was believed that it took 9 nights for the enslaved person's soul to travel back to Africa. Then you may have 40 night, which of course is a longer celebration, which the observance would carry on for 40 nights instead of 9, where you honor the person, and it's a form of transformation. Because if you think of the Christian story of Jesus being tempted for 40 days and 40 nights, something like that, where a transformation takes place as well. And it's nothing to be scared of. I mean, we have our own wake practices right here in Antigua. Now, if you've ever heard of the term deadpan board, have you heard of it? That is truly an Antiguan saying. Now, I'm sure you might hear your parents say it when someone overtakes your vehicle, especially if it's in a line of traffic. They might be like, oh, he must have deadpan board. I will kid you not, I used to think that meant, that was dialect for maybe they have a dead person in their car. Actually, no. Deadpan board was the term used because we would put our dead on a board and you'd have to quickly try and get them to the ice house. This is from years ago, before we had a proper storage for our loved ones. Another thing that we used to do here in Antigua is put lemongrass around the body. We'd also dress them in their Sunday best. And the town crier. There were no death announcements. Of course, not everyone could afford a radio. So you'd have the town crier who would go around to different villages announcing the passing of a loved one and when they would commemorate the memory or have the funeral service for them. So let's look at some of the traditions you might find in a wake. And of course, different islands might do it a little bit different, but the base of it is usually very similar, and it is paying respects to your loved one. So today, you may go to a church service, but there are more traditional bodies throughout the Caribbean, even right here in Antigua, that may practice more traditional sentiments in terms of honoring that person's memory and their life. Now this picture is pretty interesting here, and what this is a tradition where you would pass the baby over the body of the loved one, and that would be to make sure that they know that this child is one of theirs, that they are not to haunt the child or stick around. You might have persons that rearrange the house. This was said to confuse the spirit and to release them from any earthbound practices. So it's just like, rites that persons would practice even in church when you have your final rites. We are spiritual people here, and the practice of it, again, it speaks to our ancestors, what was practiced and passed on to us. Some people will honor their past ones with live flowers, fruit, produce, and music. You have different cultural forms like the Dinky Mini that would come into play during the wake. They would sing songs, they would do tracking. Tracking is when someone would start saying the word of the song, the line, and then everyone else joins in after. And this was done because, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, not everybody was literate. And so you'd have one person who could read, tracking, whether it was the Sankey songs or even folk songs. Call and response is something that was also done at wakes. And it had a lovely revelry to it, storytelling. And if you notice, the wakes that we practice here in Antigua, especially after the funeral, they may not be as elaborate as other countries, but if you think about it, some of the practices are a little bit similar, just more modern. There's the exchange of food, there is storytelling, especially exchanging stories about the loved one. There is music, whether it might be traditional, somber, or something modern. But again, it brings the community together. It honors the person who has passed. And some persons may have different practices or superstitions, like passing the baby over the dead, or covering the mirrors, because they believed that mirrors trapped the soul. So this is something that was done to let the person's body remain at peace. And depending on the practice as well, there might be a possession. Again, nothing to be freaked out about. But if that happened, it was said that the person had unfinished business. If there was a murder, for example, someone might become possessed temporarily with the person's spirit, and maybe they might leave a sign or hint at someone present who may have done them wrong. But it's really fun to act out. And if you're using it in a play, you may hear some directors instructing their cast to pour libations. Now, in pouring libations, we are pouring usually a clear liquid, usually water purified, onto the earth as a sign of respect to our ancestors, to those who we are honoring, to those who have passed on before us. And we're inviting peace into the space. No different than when you go to church and they're, sprinkling the holy water or passing the incense. Some people will use sage. So we have all these practices here that, again, depending on your country or your upbringing, we may have slightly different names, but the base is still pretty much the same. So what I'm going to look at with you to wrap up is just going through multiple choice questions, which again, we all know I'm not the biggest fan of, but here are some techniques you can look at for the multiple choice and hopefully help you become a little bit more comfortable with choosing them. So, if you remember earlier when we were talking with Rohan, tuck band provides accompaniment to which of the following Caribbean cultural forms? Wakes, landship, carnival, nine-night. Now remember, the tuck band is a cultural form in and of itself. And if you have been studying landship, there is a section that says, read up on tuck band. Do not ignore it. Read up on the tuck band because it can be used in a carnival session, but that would be significant to Barbados, and definitely the answer here would be B, because it says, which provides accompaniment. Oops. Which provides accompaniment to the following cultural art forms, right? So it is the landship. Can you remember what we called the tuck band in landship? The engine. Every Carnival Monday, an old man paints his entire body and clothing with oil and grease. Which of the following is the best justification for his action? A, freedom to make noise. B, enjoying the feel of oil and grease. C, protesting the government actions. That's right. Or D, disguising himself from members of the public. Now that seems like a pretty good question. The answer is A, freedom to make choice. Carnival is a time for us to, as they say, free up. And I'm sure some of you would have seen even your teachers, your parents, maybe members of your church, even politicians getting on a kind of whole carnival time. And then of course, come the Wednesday or the following September, everybody is well and proper. It was a time for free expression. So the old man was enjoying making noise. And if I'm gonna add on this as a bonus question, he's smearing himself with oil and grease, probably belonging to a Jab Malassi band, one of the devils, probably the black one because of oil. Which of the following elements can be found in Antigua's Carnival? Again, this is a practice question. I'm just like really happy that they actually have Antigua mentioned in it. Which one can be found in Antigua's Carnival? Look at all the options here. It is not just one thing they're listing. Whenever you come across a question with multiple statements in it or multiple options in that one option, examine all. So we have the John Bull, the Mukajumbi, the steel band music, the Fancy Sailor, Mukajumbi, steel band music, Fancy Sailor, Dame Lorraine, steel band music. We just spoke about this, so you know. Mukajumbi and steel band music you can find in several islands. But what is specific to Antigua? A, the John Bull. All right, let's look at this question. A friend has been asked to discuss significant carnival influences with a group of students. Which of the following should be communicated as significant carnival influences? Again, another one of those questions. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of carnival being an option for us to study because different islands will have different origins for their specific carnival. French influence, European costume styles, celebration of Lent. African influence, mimicking of white people in celebration of Lent. European costume styles and masks used to imitate nobility in Europe. French influence, mimicking of Europeans, and use of African masquerade traditions. So we're going to do this one by the process of elimination because it's a little tricky, especially because we know different islands have different origins. So when we think of the French influence, we're going to eliminate that question right away. Why? Because the French influence would be more significant to the French countries. St. Lucia, Dominica, of course, Guadeloupe, Martinique. And hey, you should check out Guadeloupe and Martinique's Carnival. Amazing. So those would be, so that cannot be a generalization. Those would be specific to the countries that were once colonized by France. So let us now look at that takes out A and D. Shoot. That takes out A and D. So we're stuck with B and C. So let's examine them. African influence, mimicking of white people, celebration of Lent, European costume styles and masks used to imitate nobility in Europe. It's really, really tricky. The answer, B. Because we do have that African influence. And they were indeed making fun of their slave masters. And again here, if we're looking at those carnivals that did celebrate Lent, the African influence for sure lets us know the answer for this is B. Here we have a weight question. At Sister Mary's 9-night, her 8-month-old granddaughter is passed over her body. Why is this done? Is it to ensure that the spirit of Sister Mary can possess the body for the night? to ensure that Sister Mary does not possess nor torment the body, to ensure that the baby receives blessings and good tidings, or D, to ensure that the baby will remain quiet throughout the activities of the night. Of course, we want the baby to remain quiet, but that is not the answer. Because obviously this question 9-9, we're dealing with wake, and we just spoke about that as well. Let's look at A, to ensure that the spirit can possess. No, we don't want anybody's spirit possessing a baby. So let's look at B and C. They're very close. They're really, really close. But if you remembered what I shared with you earlier, you'll definitely know that it is to ensure that the spirit knows the baby belongs with them and they will not torment the baby. So that is B. Which of the following are actions taken to ensure that the deceased does not haunt their house? Now, you may get a few questions like this. It is important to pay attention, read carefully. So you're given 3 options: flipping the mattress on the other side, covering the mirror, burning the clothes of the deceased. Those are 3 options that they're now going to combine into the answers. So it is very important to pay close attention to the numbers and the combinations here. So A, 1 and 2 only. Is it only flipping the mattress and covering the mirror and we're not burning the clothes? Is it B, covering the mirror and burning the clothes and we're leaving out 1? Is it C, just 1 and 2 and we're not going to cover the mirror? Or D, all 3 of them? In this case, it's all 3. These 3 items here are things that people would have done, and some people still do it, to ensure that the spirit of the loved one does not remain earthbound. So that's flipping the mattress on the other side, covering the mirror, and burning the clothes of the deceased. Today, what a lot of people actually do in funeral homes is that they may give some of the clothes of their loved ones to the funeral home to actually stuff the coffin a bit and bring the loved one up a little bit instead of burning the clothes. But these types of questions will come on the paper, so you have to pay attention to the combinations that are being offered. You are asked to create the mood for a wake in a production at your school. You are allowed to use only paraphernalia and movement for the activity. Which of the following suggestions would be most? And if you notice here, I have most large. Which would be most appropriate? Again, with these questions, anytime you see most or best in all caps, pay close attention to the options. Read the stem properly and look at all the options carefully. Spend a little more time on these questions because one or two, more than one option may sound right, but they're asking you for the most appropriate or the best one. So we have a little big word here, and we're going to use the context clues to figure it out. Paraphernalia. What is paraphernalia? You're not sure? Let's look at the options. Perform the bongo with a hat, sound a bottle to take, skip around a bottle, put a shawl with your partner, use a candle. Paraphernalia, those are items used for a particular purpose. In a political campaign, for example, paraphernalia could be the hats, the different scarves, the shoes, the shirts that people print. We're putting on a play, our paraphernalia. That could be our props, the items that we're using. So paraphernalia here are the items we're using to recreate that wake. So which one would be the most appropriate? Perform the bongo dance with a hat. Is the hat significant? Not sure. We know dances take place in wakes, but a hat, don't know about that. Skip around a bottle to take a partner. That sounds like a fun game, and games are played at wakes as well, but it doesn't sound completely right. Shawl your partner while moving around. That could take place at a wake, But again, if we're thinking Antigua, we don't use a lot of dances here in Antigua. That wasn't a prominent part of our wake practices in Antigua. Move on a circular path while carrying a candle. I would look here at the fact that we're carrying a candle. Candles are very significant and symbolic, you know, light your way, and dancing in a circular path. Circles are very spiritual. They suggest completion. They are modeled off of the sun as well, the rotation around the earth, the completion, the cycle of life. And from death comes life as well, which is where some of the more provocative dances come from, the movement of the pelvis, like in the Dinky Mini, because we are looking at the fact that yes, death has occurred, but there can be new life that comes from it, literally. So the answer here is move on a circular path while carrying a candle. The candle and the use of the circular part there, those are closely linked to wake. All right, so that wraps up some of the multiple choice questions that may appear on your exam for CSEC Theatre Arts. I want to say a special thank you to Miss Brown, Miss Hunte, and of course Rohan, who is here in today's episode to give you some more information on landship. And of course to Mrs. Byron, the coordinator of the Performing Arts at the Ministry of Education, and of course my friends here at ABS for making this possible. I certainly hope that this was helpful, and don't forget, breathe, read each question carefully, and trust your gut instinct. Your teachers prepared you well, so you'll be fine. Bye.
You've been watching Homeschool 101, a partnership between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Thank you for viewing this lesson. Join us again next time.